G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff, Ukraine War Update for the 2nd of May 2026. Now as the war continues, I'll continue to bring my unique coverage of the war, covering both sides without prejudice, and bringing you not only the obvious but the obscure news, hoping to enlighten you as to the real situation in Ukraine and not the propaganda that the Poles, the Czechs, the Germans, the Romanians want you to believe, or the French. They don't care. They don't care what you believe. They're that arrogant and that stupid. They've traded their long-term future for comfort and feelings. So, and of course the English, they just want to believe for just a little bit longer that they are the world's superpower, when in reality they are hiding behind America's legs and going, you get them, you get them. Alright, so we finally have some admissions that there are drone attacks deep into Ukraine and that Ukrainian air defences are unable to stop it, as there are multiple attacks across Ukraine, and of course the cope is that we shot them all down. Well, in reality, 21 got through, allegedly, probably more than that, but we'll never know the truth because Ukraine is as bad as transparent as mud. And across the northern front, we have several conflicts with nothing really to report other than there were several conflicts. Same here, north of Kupiansk. Now, there has been an advance in Kupiansk where Russia has advanced on Cyaninka. Actually taken Cyaninka. Yeah, so as you see, multiple towns have fallen to the Russians. Cyaninka. The Russians have advanced, as you see. Though they're still on the outskirts of Kupiansk, they're consolidating their positions, moving into Petronovia. So, yeah, this is to bring up more heavy artillery than their previous efforts. For whatever reason, Zelensky's going to throw again for the third time, maybe the fourth time, I forget which. No, this would be the third time. You're going to see Russia take Kupiansk over the next couple of months, and then Ukraine will come in and try and liberate it. Will the Ukrainian offensive succeed? Well, we'll see. And we'll see maybe something happen one of these days here in Lyman as well, but it seems to be a containment operation now. They consolidated their lines and they are moving south. As you can see, they've taken Orezhny, Zarin, and move further here. All of this. Alright. From here, they headed to, let's say, taking this. Alright. Taking the Donetsk. Alright. Holding the Ukrainians. They're heading for Monovinka. Probably want to cut off this road and this will fall. So as we go around the map, of course, that was already. The Russians haven't moved here or there. North of Chavashar, they're still consolidating their position at Krasnokovia, fighting the Ukrainians here and here, still fighting here. Now these are up here. 1, The Ukrainians have been pushed out already. But there are artillery exchanges across the multiple fronts. Let's just see. Yeah, so we have also, Privilegia. It's not on the map. Oh, there it is. The Russians, have advanced on Privilegia. They haven't taken Privilegia, they've only advanced on it. But, As we go around the map, there isn't much movement in other areas except here near Ivaninka. They've almost taken all of this, control the banks. And here, as you can see, they've advanced. So, yeah. A bit of movement here, not much movement here, and a bit of movement here in the south, and a bit of movement here near south of Zaporozhye, and a lot of activity, glide bombs and rockets. We also have attacks down here. Where is it? Now, there were reported attacks down here somewhere, but I can't see the name on the map. Unless, of course, it's a Russian name, but I mean down here, which is possible. Again, we have Ukrainian news reporting Izmail. So, we'll go stop for that now. I brought you a lot of Russian weapons. Now, one of the most common tanks in Ukraine is, in fact, the Polish T-91. Now, this is an updated version of the T-72. Now, the Crab is this hull with 152. Well, actually, they're increasing it to 155. They're putting 155 guns on them now. But it was a 152 using Russian ammunition. Their Russian ammunition is actually coming to exhaustion, and they are appearing to be converting over to 155. How much of this is true is hard to say, but Poland's T-91 was put on display quite some time ago as a weapon of victory. That Russia stood no chance with this new variant of the T-72 on the battlefield. And as we see, 2 months later, what's happened? You're heading to a slaughterhouse, he says. They have made no difference. The tank has survived the initial, the Torty, for whatever reason. There you go. Lots of tanks headed to Ukraine, fighting on the battlefields. All the usual propaganda. Look at us. And of course, they got the coke cages. They got they've had to add extra plating to their armor. They've added a lot of smoke canisters. Probably a couple more reverse gears. But Ukrainian soldier, well, they got a lot of Ranger shells, And what happens? Well, we end up only carrying high explosive to use against troops or carrying armor piercing to fight tanks. The psychological factor that we feel so much more protected. Yes, we run around. What are we compensating for? But, there you go. That's a lot of smoke canisters. You know why most tanks don't have a lot of smoke canisters? Because they realise that if you need a lot of smoke canisters, you're done for, right? you're popping smoke on a wide area, you're better off having an artillery barrage of smoke from the rear. Alright, so this doesn't want to load anymore for some reason. Oh, there we go. We get some loading. Okay, there we go. Side armor plating. This is pretty much the Russians doing the same thing with the T-90. So this is reactive armor. You often don't see them with their reactive armor plates. They're screwed on. They have special caps that they basically bolt screw into the armor. It's a licensed version of the T-72M1 that was manufactured in Poland. However, it has some Western upgrades, Western optics, for instance. And the barrel is cold drawn, similar to German barrels. It's actually believed the Bundeswehr actually do use the same barrel, the Germans' system for barrel making. Captured in World War II, by the way. The Polish have been, and a lot of Russians are using the same cold-drawn steel techniques as Germany did in World War II. I cannot say whether or not it makes a better tank or not, or a better gun. What we have here is pure cope and propaganda. But there is it's not a bad tank. And in the hands of probably a more sophisticated fighting force, they might have stood a better chance against the Russians. So, see, everybody underestimated the Russians. And, yeah. And these lone wolf attacks by Ukrainian tanks do seemingly produce sometimes results. But for every lone wolf attack where you see a Polish T-91 go out, how many? 90, 100? Who knows? Right? Maybe 7 a week. Who knows? But I can tell you, if these lone wolf attacks, these Ukrainian tank charges were working, we would not see the Russians having, right? The Russians would not, in the last week, taken that. Push through here, right? Filled in all this, right? In months, the Russians would not still be pushing through. They'd be blue markers everywhere. And you'd be seeing, huge victories. No, this is all propaganda. And the problem is, look at it. Look how many people eat this shit up. Because they cannot stop and think. Right? If these tanks were so wonderful, why is Ukraine losing? They have superior manpower. They have superior weapons. Everything on paper says they are doing better than the Russians. Yet their own maps they have 120,000 more men than the Russians. But the Russians have more artillery. The Russians have more rockets. And that's the difference. You can have all the tanks in the world, but the anti-tank systems that the Russians have got are defective. And their rockets and missiles are effective. They are slowly grinding Ukraine down as another business has been struck. Well, they say drone attack could be a missile, but another Ukrainian warehouse in the port has been set on fire. The Ukrainians say, we drowned them all, drowning most. Well, yeah, but they're still hitting their targets. And Russia hasn't stopped. And Russia keeps advancing. I don't know what it is, but they have this cope. They believe they can outlast the Russians. Now, it's true. The Afghans outlasted the Americans, That was predominantly because the Europeans wanted a political victory and would not do anything about Pakistan and the troubles with supply lines and the betrayals of Pakistan. It should have been kicked to the curb. But security concerns and traditional alliances, fucking England and their fucking traditions. Brain dead bastards, I tell you. So, and the Americans got some too, so, equal share the blame. I forget who said it. Australian soldier said we could have easily won. We could have easily won multiple times over in Afghanistan if they only let us kill the enemy. So there you go. And it's not like in Ukraine they need permission. They are eager to kill the Russians and their fellow Ukrainians. And yet their security apparatus seems to be more focused on the political. Seems to be more focused, and this is not a Zelensky issue or it's actually a long-standing systemic corruption in Ukraine that after the Soviet Union, the intelligence apparatus, Ukraine's security service, has been working to destroy any leadership that would resist the corruption and lead the people. Right? They either destroy them. A lot of your opposition leaders in Ukraine right now, some of them before Zelensky, even some of the people who ran against Zelensky are in prison or in Spain in exile or dead or in hiding. Those who took the easy way out got to live it. Well, except for one, there was an assassination of an opposition leader in Spain, helped by the Spanish. The Spanish arrested the assassin, took him to the Ukrainian embassy, and let him out. He was still in the bloody tracksuit. This is why America is pissed at Spain. The Kiev regime. I thought when the Russians were talking about the Kiev regime, they were talking about Zelensky. Well, it turns out according to the DPR, when they're talking about the Kiev regime, they're talking about the deep state apparatuses like the SBU, the Ukrainian Security Service, the Ukrainian Military Intelligence Service, and the Ukrainian Judicial Service, who selectively prosecute, Now, I'm not saying that all Ukrainian politicians are corrupt, but it seems to me they have most politicians around the world are just presenting themselves as corrupt. Now, I'm not saying they're all stealing, right? That's the traditional corruption. I say most of them are turning a blind eye and getting huge political donations to not be an effective leader, to be a clown, to be a douchebag, to put on a performance, to be hyperbolic and screech about systemic corruption and racism day in, day out. And Ukraine is no shortage of people screeching about corruption and doing nothing. And as we see, did I not tell you, the Ukrainian drone company started as cigarette smugglers. Did you know that? Ukraine's own media told us. I covered this a little while ago, amongst other corruption in Ukraine. No one gives a shit. But yet another Ukrainian company is called out by the Ministry of Public Anti-Corruption Council in Ukraine. And again, it's a lifelong associate of Vladimir Zelensky, who's at the center, that there's risky suppliers overpaying. They overpay for parts. They clear signs of abuse of power, abuse of influence, misuse of funds. This is apparently they've tried to develop ballistic missiles and and voice plans for air defense systems, and they got a lot of money to do this. But have they got anything? No. Now, Firepoint, founded in 2022, was promoted by Zelensky during his overseas tours. And as I said, they have produced the Flamingo cruise missile, allegedly, which allegedly looks a lot like a V1, allegedly. And a lot of the technology actually came and transferred from Britain because Keir Starmer is an asshole, and he and Zelensky should get a hotel room together, but that's beside the point. Firepoint has announced big projects, but a lot of it is just give me money, corruption behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, Europe will do nothing because they are all politically corrupt, right? If you say the right things, if you're anti-Christian, if you subscribe to the World Economic Forum, you seem to get away with everything up until including murder. And, it's a complex, and it is a complex, multi-layered problem. I'm not saying Russia's immune from corruption. They recently, by recently, I think it was 6 months ago, jailed a general for selling tank engines to Poland as tractor parts. Yeah. And those tank engines were going into Polish tanks that were then sent to Ukraine. You think the Russians wouldn't notice their own engines in the ruins? See, Russia, as they advance, they have taken hundreds of tanks captive. So they're going to sooner or later notice. You'd have to be an absolute idiot. Obviously he was. He was obviously hoping that he could find a escape plan, Ooh, can I be on the next tour to America? I seem to have some good ideas that we... Yeah. No. Chief of General Staff of Logistics. Yeah, what a stupid... Although, yeah, if you're going to be corrupt, it would be logistics or in defence contracts. No, I'm not saying which system is better, but it just seems to be the lack of transparency. That liberal democracy seems to be an absolute failure when it comes to corruption, whether it's Ursula von der Leyen and her mysterious donations from Pfizer, which she said, no, that went to the people. I solicited donations for the people. And it just goes on and on. Right, the fancy tours, the lavish lifestyle they lead as they go on these pretty much junkets where they could spend up to 6 months of the year in conferences in Switzerland. So yeah, that's where the corruption lies. It's not always the fact that they take public funds; it's the cozying up to the world's most corrupt people. And it seems to be Switzerland, of course, is the centre of all stink in Europe. And it's like, it's like the Washington, D.C. You think Brussels is just a branch office. It's long suspected that the Bilderberg Group has run Europe since World War II, put together by the US government to collaborate the rebuilding of Europe, and it just created itself a tentacle, an octopus, where they took all the key industries and turned themselves into billionaires and filtered down very little to the people. They gave them a few nice apartment buildings, but once the cameras stopped rolling, the vast majority were left to just occupy whatever houses they could find. And yeah, stop complaining, or we won't give you tenancy. So the government had people by the short and curlies in Russia as well as in Europe, and that was the whole point of World War II, was to destroy the power of the people, to crush the people's hopes and dreams, so that the new aristocracy could rise. That is the merchant class to rise above the landowner, the farmer, the factory owner could concentrate wealth, buy lots of factories, and just create new monopolies. We are now seeing the rise of the new aristocracy again in entertainment. And as you notice, a lot of these entertainers, they sing the same song. Hands off Iran, support Ukraine. Before it was Darfur. All the trendies fundraising for Darfur. And again, how much of those fundraisings went to Darfur? And then you turn around and look at George Clooney. He goes from an actor getting $100,000 an episode to $1 million an episode on ER, and then he's suddenly, 10 years later, a billionaire with a shady vodka deal. Did I say vodka? Oh, well, there were many shady deals with that slimy. But yeah, opportunities don't come knocking to ordinary people. Ordinary people end up on the battlefield, crouched behind a Comet 2. I know it looks like a self-propelled gun. There's in fact a Comet missile launcher, and yeah, I don't know why he doesn't have a remote switch. You can even see the cable. It's probably for PR. Yeah, I give you 100 rupee and a half a bottle of vodka if you go crouch by the Comet. Let's see how much it should be a man. But Russian forces, as usual, have put out their battle report. Over 1,000 Ukrainians a day, around 8,000 this week. 6 settlements they have claimed to have captured, and then give their total summary of aircraft and boats lately in the last year and a bit. And the latest town being Pokalyanoye, allowing the Russians to improve their technical position on the Kharkiv front. Ukrainians, yeah. See, on the other side of the river, as you may or may not know, a lot of Ukraine is flat, open, right? There are hills. There are bodies of water, but there are some hills. But this is flat. This is big open areas, mostly. That's why. And predominantly, militarily, trying to cross those big open fields with crisscrossing trench lines, I think it's fair to say this is up for grabs. This is not negotiable. I think sooner or later, right, we see the way things are going, most of Russia's attacks south of this line. Have you not noticed? Most of Russia's ignored most of this. They even halted short of Nikopol. Right? The Ukrainians flooded this to stop the Russian advance, but the Russians had already stopped advancing north. Now, they probably were going to come up round Zaporozhye. I wouldn't be surprised. But it seems to be along this line to Nikopol and then down. So, and again, I think it's coming down here. It could be. Don't know how much of this they want. again. How much of this has been attacked? How much of this is... We never get... Often we're not told about the attacks on these towns, so clearly we know where they're headed. It just takes... It just takes time to look at where all the attacks are concentrated. Now you say, well, if they're attacking Kharkiv, does that mean they want Kharkiv? They want to neutralise those Kharkiv, Dnipro, Kryvyi. They want to neutralise those areas, but Russia just doesn't have the resources. They are trying to hold back all the time. They are trying to... remember, they're punching above their weight and have been for 75 years. They are, however, the mouse that roared. I mean, the mighty Soviet Union did have Europe shaking in its boots, and Europe just wants its revenge. But the reality is, Russia was putting on a facade, using Eastern Europe as a blockade against what they thought was going to be a Western invasion. They overestimated interventionism, and of course, Russian interventionism in Africa has come back on the arse to bite them. China has pushed Russia out of many parts of Africa now, and Africa is destabilized thanks to many coups and communism, and the Chinese are spreading their influence. But there's been pushback in Ghana. Ghana's now, ironically, like Russia, wanting to pass laws to ensure that resources stay in the control of the Ghanaian government. Now, they should make these laws almost hard. The problem is, well, I fear, just like some gold producers, that the corruption will sink in, as in that once these governments become unassailable and popular, they'll reveal themselves to be just as corrupt as the Ukrainians or many other. Now, Ukraine isn't much of a gold producer. They're more of a producer of... now, it's only a small amount of rare earth materials. Most mining in Ukraine is played out. Now, there are still strategic reserves, which is why you have the Trump's $1 trillion deal. But ultimately, that's a 10-year deal that won't actually kick in until 2030 and take 10 years to develop and won't pay off for another 10 years after that. These are all long-term deals. Europe is ruining itself for the sake of prophecies and politics, and it's just stupid. The general said it best. I forget his name now. I should have looked it up, but he said a neutral Ukraine is the best buzzer we have because there's nowhere for the Russians to hide, and if we destroy the Russians on Ukrainian soil, we'll have the help of the Ukrainians. If we absorb Ukraine, we now invite a war, unless, of course, we extend Europe to Russia. Russia has said, no, you rejected us, and we don't want to join anything less. Yeah, they see the EU as now a parasite that infests governments and robs them of their sovereignty. That's not what the EU should be. That's what fascism is. The EU is the fascist dream, by the way, of the Nazis. So thank you all for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Thank you for all the comments. Please support the channel. You support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.